I've often heard it said that we only teach what we test. Give me a break. We only teach what we test. Well, if you have a system that is all about one test, given one day a year, then it skews the entire year toward too many benchmark tests, but to measure a child and what they can be capable of, their potential, on a test given one day in a year, negates all of the work, all of the learning, the magic that happens in the classroom. So I'm not there. Or to say to you, if we don't test it, you're not going to teach it. What we should do is to free teachers up so that they can teach the curriculum and then make sure that the students are free to learn. You're free to teach. They're free to learn. Rather than, oh no, we've got to have this accountability system. Now, don't get me wrong. I think none of us should shy away from a reasonable accountability system where we measure progress and growth for that student. But each of you today that are right here, you know exactly the potential of your students, and you don't shortchange them. You know that they can do a little more. You know that when they love learning, they're excited to get to the classroom, that it's relevant to them. Other people don't believe that. They don't believe in the power of teachers. If not, they would be talking about how do we value teachers rather than just how much money we put into the system. I'm sorry that the chairman of education is not here today, but I'm not going to make apologies for him. All I know is that he thinks so little of teachers that he doesn't even bother to show up. That's not putting Texas first. And I've heard him talk about an education crisis. The education crisis, Dan, is that we cut $5.4 billion from our schools at a time that we were increasing accountability and trying to do more with less. That was the crisis. And my friends, having schemes like vouchers isn't going to solve it. Vouchers is not the answer. You can't replace a teacher. I am an aficionado of technology, right? All my life, all I ever wanted was a Dick Tracy watch. Okay, those of you that understand I went to school with a slide rule know my love of technology. That's all I wanted. I love the technology. And I know that online learning can be a useful adjunct to tool, but I know that it's about the blended seat time. And anyone who says that if we just don't have a qualified teacher, turn on a computer and have virtual profit schools doesn't know what's happening in the classroom. They miss the magic of what happens in that classroom. You see, I've been there. I've been the recipient of it, and I've seen my family members. You know that magic moment, that aha, epiphany moment, when the knowledge and the information is transferred from that classroom teacher to the student. And they have this look like, I got it. And they're excited. I'm sorry, you don't get that in a computer. You don't. You've got to have quality, certified teachers teaching that subject matter. And yes, let them utilize the technology, but say that you can just replace it? No. So, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this? How did we get so far that property-rich school districts, property-poor school districts, urban school districts, rural school districts, parents, are all suing the state? Because the legislature didn't do its job. The only thing in the Constitution that really stands out is it says that the legislature must provide for the general diffusion of knowledge. Why? Because we thought it was a good idea? No. The framers of our Texas Constitution knew that to keep a representative democracy strong, the bedrock of that is an educated citizenry. The bedrock of any free country is the education of the next generation, not just the current generation, but the next generation. And so it should all be about how do we get the right resources to our classrooms. You know, without quality teachers, we're not going to get a quality education for our students. But there are those that speak about restricted government, about less and less government. And they don't just mean the big agencies in Austin. They mean government employees, and that includes teachers. You know, when folks go to Austin and they vote no on everything, whether it's roads or bridges, or water projects, or education, you gotta wonder, do you wanna be part of the solution? Do you wanna be part of keeping Texas strong? Or are you just so worried about the next election and some primary voters that you will just have to vote no? I'm sorry, just saying no doesn't cut it. We should be saying yes to our students, yes to the future, and yes to quality teachers. Our roads, I know that my mom went to work every day, joyous, knowing that she could make a difference, that she could mold, and that she could help her students. But I'm also the daughter of a veteran. And just like my dad, there are many that came before him and will come after him, including my nephew, who's in Afghanistan, and yet another tour of duty, that we owe a lot to the people who continually allow us to live in this freedom. I know that there are so many educators who have also proudly worn the uniform. We know how successful some of our programs like Troops to Teachers are. In fact, several years ago, our Teacher of the Year was a guy from San Antonio called, he is Dan the Man. That's what we called him, Dan the Man. He was a 5th grade teacher, and he came and got certified after spending a lifetime in the military. But at this time, I must say thanks, and we ought to say thanks to those who have served in our armed forces. So if you've ever served in Air Force, Army, Marines, Coast Guard, and the Navy, absolutely. I have to say Navy, my father-in-law was aboard the USS Southampton at Iwo Jima. If you ever served regular armed forces, Guard or Reserve, can you stand up right now and let us thank you? All of our veterans. Just like these veterans who have now become educators, I know that there are educators who are veteran educators, kind of like my mom. But when she started out, she really wasn't. And I want to let you know of something very personal that she went through. And she fought for her students. So she was at Barkley Elementary in the 60s. Early 60s, when it was still, you know, you couldn't speak Spanish. And she was the choir director, but she knew that her students in a absolutely predominantly Mexican-American, back then they didn't have Title I schools, but it was a school that had majority of Mexican-American children, that she wanted to give them pride in their culture and in their heritage. So as the choir director, she formed a little group called Los Tejanitos and taught them the folk music. Well, she was brought up on charges because they were singing in Spanish. The other teachers in the school rallied behind her, and she had a principal that would fight for her. And they went to the school board. And it was a very tough time, and I remember sitting there with my dad thinking, our mom's gonna lose her job. She's gonna lose the job because she went against what she was supposed to do. Well, all the children showed up in their costumes. And my mother explained, yes, they were singing in Spanish, and she had them sing a song in Spanish. Then she had them sing in French. Then she had them sing in German. And what my mom did is she took that creativity and taught them that it was the joy of learning their culture, but learning about the German culture and singing, and in French. Well, Mom didn't lose her job, and a few years later, they totally reversed that. You can't speak Spanish in a classroom. And I can't help but think that my mom was part of these educators that knew that what we needed to do to get to these students was to challenge what was the status quo. And she was joined by her organizations, by her teachers. And so I come before you today knowing that that promise, that challenge of the status quo to get to the next level will never die between ATPE and the promise to our students. And the promise that I give to you is that I will stand right along with you to get us to the next level. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you for your love of your students. And thank you. Dios y Texas. Gracias. Thank you. Thank you. Love you guys and gals. Thank you to our veterans.